Alina Marsh had grown used to filling silence with anything that wasn't her own thoughts. On most evenings, she played old records or let a documentary murmur in the background until she fell asleep on the couch. Halloween night, however, carried a different kind of quiet than watchful. As if the darkness outside had paused just to listen to her breathe. Laughter from trick-or-treaters rose and fell along the distant road, bright but somehow far away, unable to soften the emptiness of the farmhouse she now lived in alone. She stood by the window with a mug of cooling tea, watching porch lights flicker from neighboring homes. Her own porch light stayed off. She hadn't wanted visitors tonight, not with the ache of separation still raw, tightening around her ribs every time she noticed Aaron's absence in the smallest corners of the house. She told herself she liked solitude, but the truth pressed through cracks she tried to ignore. A soft knock broke the stillness. Alina stiffened. It wasn't the cheerful tapping of children asking for candy. It was slow, measured, almost hesitant. She waited, breath caught, but no second knock followed, just the soft brush of wind against brittle leaves. Probably teens, she whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. She tried returning to her tea, but unease lingered. Her thoughts drifted to the odd little moments she had brushed aside over the past week. A photo frame turned slightly. A back window cracked open when she was sure she had shut it. Footsteps on the porch she blamed on a stray cat. She had chalked it up to stress and the disorientation of adjusting to life alone. Then it came again. A sudden, forceful thud that shook the front door so hard her mug slipped from her hand, smashing against the counter and splattering tea across her wrist. Alina stumbled back, heart hammering, eyes locked on the door vibrating from the impact. That wasn't kids, she whispered to herself. She grabbed her phone. No new messages except an unread voicemail from Aaron. Her stomach twisted. She almost ignored it, but dread nudged her thumb. His voice came through tense and uneven. Alina, call me back. Something's not right. Just call me. Aaron never sounded rattled. Hearing him like that churned unease into something colder. A soft creak drifted from the rear of the house. Alina froze. It wasn't the door. It came from the hallway leading to the old guest room she rarely entered. Her skin prickled as she stepped forward, floorboards groaning under her weight as if warning her to turn back. Who's there? She called out, voice thin. Silence answered. She flicked on the hallway light, flooding the passage with a weak yellow glow. Nothing seemed disturbed until her gaze landed on a photograph lying face down on the side table. A picture of her and Aaron from their last trip together. She remembered placing it upright that morning. Her pulse spiked. I didn't touch this. A metallic scrape whispered from the living room. Alina's breath hitched. The sound was unmistakable metal, dragged slowly across wood. Not random, not accidental. She dialed Miles, the teenage neighbor who sometimes helped with chores. He picked up fast, his breathing winded. Miss Marsh, everything okay? Miles, someone's in my house, she whispered. I'm coming. Lock yourself somewhere. She wanted to obey, but fear pinned her. The scraping grew louder. Steady, deliberate, then it stopped. The sudden stillness made her stomach twist. She edged toward the living room doorway, terrified yet unable to stay still. A cold draft brushed her arm as she reached the threshold. The room looked empty, but something gleamed on the floor beneath the window. A metal pry bar. Her mouth went dry. Someone had brought it inside. Someone had been close while she moved through the house unaware. Someone had been watching her long before tonight. Alina. The whisper brushed her ear. She spun around, nearly collapsing, but no one stood behind her. Only the dim hallway and her front door, now cracked open though she was certain she had locked it. The wind pushed it wider with a low groan. Her fear sharpened, sinking talons into her chest. The signs she had dismissed all week were no longer coincidences. They formed a pattern, a message she had refused to see. She backed toward the kitchen, searching desperately for something to defend herself. Her hands trembled as she reached for the heaviest object within caster and pan. She gripped the handle, knuckles white. A new sound rose. Scraping again coming from the basement door. Alina's breath stuttered. The basement was always cold, always unsettling, its small window easy to force open. She realized, with sickening clarity, she hadn't checked it in days. The scraping grew louder, then shifted into soft footsteps, climbing wooden stairs. She stumbled backward, pan raised. Her phone buzzed. A text from Miles. 2 minutes away. Stay upstairs. 2 minutes felt impossibly long. Alina dragged a wooden chair and wedged it under the basement doorknob. Immediately, pressure pushed from the other side slow at first, then harder, making the chair groan. "Stop!" she screamed, though fear cracked her voice. The pushing ceased. Then tapping began. A rhythmic metal tap, each strike climbing a step higher. Tap, tap, tap. Elena staggered toward the foyer, pan trembling in her grip. Headlights swept across her yard. Miles's car skidding to a stop. Relief rushed through her like air after drowning. But before she could move, one last scrape echoed from the basement, long, deliberate, promising the night was far from over. Miles's headlights spilled across the yard, washing the farmhouse in a pale beam that briefly steadied Elena's trembling breath. But the scraping from the basement had not stopped echoing inside her bones. She clutched the pan tighter, backing toward the foyer as Miles jumped from his car and hurried up the porch steps. The moment he flung open the door, she felt her knees weaken with relief until she saw the expression on his face. His eyes weren't on her. They were fixed behind her, toward the shadows stretching across the living room floor. "Elena, someone's here," he whispered. Before she could turn, a figure emerged from behind the staircase, low, hesitant, as though caught between retreat and confession. A cheap Halloween mask dangled from his fingers. His face was young, too young, and painfully familiar. Dark hair, narrow shoulders, a nervous swallow. "Dylan," Elena breathed. Dylan Heron, the shy 17-year-old who lived 3 houses down, stared at her with wide, pleading eyes. The pry bar she'd seen earlier lay at his feet. His hands shook as he lifted them, palms open, as if surrendering to something larger than fear. "I didn't want to scare you," he said, voice cracking. "I swear I wasn't going to hurt you." Miles stepped protectively in front of her, but Dylan shook his head. "Please, don't act like I'm dangerous. I came because you needed help." Elena felt the room tilt. "I needed help. By breaking into my house." Dylan stepped forward, flinching when Miles tensed. "You don't understand. Someone's been watching you. I've seen them. Every night. They kept coming around, checking your windows, leaving things. I tried to chase them off. I only broke in tonight because he said he was coming back." Elena asked, pulse pounding. "Who are you talking about?" Dylan avoided her gaze, rubbing the heel of his palm against his forehead. "I'm trying to explain it right. I'm trying to make you see." Miles clenched his fists. "You need to leave before I call the cops." Something desperate flickered across Dylan's face. "No, I'm the only one trying to keep her safe. I've been watching over her since he left." His eyes locked on Elena's, raw and exposed. "You were sad. You were alone. I could tell every time you walked the yard pretending to be okay." A chill spread through Elena's chest. "How did you know that?" Dylan inhaled shakily. "I was nearby, not close enough for you to see me, but I was making sure nobody else came around. At first, it was harmless. I'd sit by the fence, but then I started finding things: your scarf in the field, your porch light unscrewed, your back door cracked open. I knew someone else was sneaking around." Elena stared at him, feeling the familiar unease she had forced herself to ignore. "You should have told me," she said quietly. "You wouldn't have believed me," Dylan murmured. Miles scoffed. "So instead you break in with a bar. That's protecting her." Dylan looked down at the tool, shaking his head violently. "That wasn't to hurt her. It was for him." "Him who?" Miles snapped. Dylan hesitated, then his voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Your ex-husband." Elena felt her stomach twist. "Aaron." Dylan nodded. "He came by 2 weeks ago. I saw him near your kitchen window. He was angry, muttering to himself, punching the siding. I tried to talk to him, but he shoved me. Told me to stay out of it." Dylan swallowed hard. "I started checking on your house every night after that, just watching. Just making sure he didn't come back." Elena's breath shivered as memories crashed against her. Aaron's shouting, his sharp jealousy, the way he paced whenever she threatened to leave. But this didn't make sense. "Dylan, how do I know you're not making this up just to justify what you've done?" His expression cracked. "Because I have proof." He reached slowly into his jacket pocket, and Miles stepped forward, ready to tackle him. But Dylan pulled out nothing but a small notebook, dog-eared and creased, pages sticking out like feathers. He extended it toward Elena with trembling fingertips. "I wrote down every time he came," Dylan said. "Every night I heard him. Every night I saw him. Even the times he shouted your name while you slept." The room seemed to shrink around her. She took the notebook hesitantly. The handwriting was messy, rushed, frantic. Dates, times, descriptions. One entry froze her completely. "He went inside tonight, through the back room, stayed 8 minutes, left angry. Elena's eyes burned. I was asleep, she whispered. I know, Dylan said softly. I tried to warn you, but he told me you'd never trust me. And then he started giving me instructions, saying I should prove I really cared about you. He said if I didn't help him, he'd make you disappear. Miles stared at him, disbelief and fear mixing sharply. You're telling us Aaron manipulated you? Threatened you? Dylan nodded, tears spilling. I thought he wanted to scare you into coming back to him. I didn't think he'd actually hurt you. But then he started telling me weird things. Stuff I didn't want to do. He said you belonged to him, and that I was supposed to keep you home until he showed up tonight. Elena's chest tightened painfully. Tonight. He's coming, Dylan whispered. He said you'd finally understand everything when the night was over. A gust of wind rattled the window. The farmhouse felt colder than before, shadows lengthening like they were waiting for something. Miles pulled out his phone. We're calling the police now. Whatever this is, it ends here. But Dylan's eyes widened with sudden terror. He pointed toward the front window, voice breaking. No, it's too late. He's already here. And as Elena turned toward the porch, headlights swept across the yard again, this time slowly, deliberately illuminating the outline of a man stepping out of a car she knew all too well. Aaron's silhouette stood frozen in the wash of headlights, hands tucked into the pockets of his jacket as if he had simply come to return something she'd forgotten. Elena felt the breath leave her lungs. Nothing about his stance was rushed or frantic. He looked composed for someone who supposedly came to warn her. The porch light flickered once, catching his face in a pale stutter of brightness. The faint smile that curled at the edges of his mouth chilled her blood. Miles moved instinctively in front of her, one arm outstretched like a shield. Dylan pressed himself against the wall, trembling. Aaron stepped onto the porch as though he owned it, as though nothing about this night was wrong. Elena, he said, voice calm, familiar, rehearsed. I think we need to talk. Elena's throat tightened. You shouldn't be here. Aaron's eyes drifted past her, landing on Dylan. His expression shifted sharp, irritated. A flash of recognition turned sour. I see the boy finally told you something. Pity, he never gets it right. Dylan flinched. You lied to me, he whispered. You said you just wanted her safe. Aaron lifted a brow. Safe. That wasn't a lie. She was spiraling after the separation. Barely sleeping. Leaving doors unlocked. Distracted behind the wheel. Someone had to step in before she hurt herself. Elena's stomach nodded. You staged the break-ins. You manipulated him. Manipulated. Aaron stepped inside the doorway without waiting to be invited. Dylan came to me first. He was already obsessed with you. I simply redirected that energy. Miles clenched his fists. You need to leave before I call the police. Aaron laughed softly, a humorless sound. Call them. I'll tell them the truth, that I came to check on my wife, and found her with two young men who broke into her house. He glanced at the pry bar on the floor. That will look interesting in a report. We're not married anymore, Elena said. Her hands shook, but her voice steadied. You don't get to do this. He turned back to her, expression hardening. You think a piece of paper changes anything? You and I are tied together whether you like it or not. You walking away doesn't rewrite who you are. Elena felt the old fear creeping up her spine, the same fear she'd lived with for years, the fear that made her shrink whenever he walked into a room. But something else rose with it now. Anger. She took a small step forward. You don't control me anymore. Aaron's jaw locked. The shift was instant, dangerous. You never learned when to stop talking. Dylan moved then, voice cracking. Don't touch her. Aaron shot him a cold glare. You were supposed to keep her calm, keep her inside until I arrived, but you couldn't even do that right. I didn't want to scare her. Dylan cried. I thought you don't think. Aaron snapped. You follow instructions. The words echoed like a slap. Something inside Dylan broke. His hands balled into fists. I tried to help her, he whispered. You used me. Aaron stepped closer, dismissing him with a flick of his eyes. And look where that got us. Then he reached out toward Elena's arm. Miles reacted instantly, shoving himself between them. Aaron stumbled back a step, shock flashing across his face before fury overtook it. You little, he lunged. The living room erupted into chaos. Miles grabbed Aaron's coat, trying to restrain him. Aaron slammed an elbow into Miles's ribs, sending him crashing into the coffee table. Elena rushed to help, but Aaron's hand clamped around her wrist, twisting until pain shot up her arm. You think you can replace me, he snarled. Elena shoved him with all her strength. He stumbled again, losing balance long enough for Dylan to leap behind him, shoving him toward the wall. A picture frame shattered on impact, glass scattering across the hardwood like ice. Aaron turned on Dylan with a roar, grabbing the boy by the collar and hurling him to the ground. Dylan hit the floor hard, wheezing. "I did everything you asked," he gasped. "And you were still going to hurt her." Aaron reached for him, but Alina darted forward, throwing her weight against Aaron's back. He twisted violently, sending her stumbling into the side table. Pain shot through her hip as she hit the floor. The world spun for a second before her eyes focused on something near her hand, a hammer. Dylan's hammer, brought earlier, lying beside the fallen lamp. The metal head glinted beneath the broken frame. Aaron noticed it at the same moment. They both lunged. He reached first, his fingers brushing the handle, but Miles tackled him from the side, knocking it out of reach. The hammer skidded across the floor, coming to rest several feet away near the staircase. Everyone froze for a split second, breathless, staring at the weapon lying between them like awaiting verdict. Aaron shoved Miles off and scrambled toward it. Dylan crawled after him, desperate, choking on his own breath. Alina pushed herself up, vision swimming, and staggered forward. Aaron's hand closed around the handle. He rose slowly, chest heaving, the hammer's shadow stretching long across the floor. "I didn't want it to come to this," he said, though his eyes gleamed with something far from regret. "But you've given me no choice." Dylan held up his hands, tears streaking his face. "Don't. Please don't do this." Miles reached for his phone, but Aaron swung the hammer suddenly, smashing the device from his grasp. It clattered across the floor, pieces scattering. Alina felt something in her finally crack, not fear, but resolved. "Aaron," she said softly, "you don't have to do this." He turned toward her. And for a moment, the room stilled. Then a sound broke through the heavy silence, a distant siren. Faint but unmistakable, growing louder as it approached the house. Aaron's expression twisted. "You called them." "No," Elena whispered. "But someone must have." The siren wailed closer. Aaron raised the hammer higher, knuckles white. Alina braced herself. Dylan screamed, and the hammer began to fall, not revealing who it struck. Not yet, as red and blue lights flooded the windows and the night cracked open. The hammer struck with a sound that split the night open. A sharp, brutal crack swallowed instantly by the rising wail of sirens. Alina did not see the moment of impact. She only felt the air shift, a violent collision of movement and panic, followed by a sickening thud that silenced every voice in the room. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then the lights from outside burst through the windows, painting the walls in frantic streaks of red and blue. Elena's ears rang. Her vision swam. She blinked until shapes steadied. Dylan knelt beside someone on the floor, his chest heaving, his hands shaking violently. Miles crouched nearby, clutching his arm, blood dripping from his elbow where he had hit the table, and on the ground between them lay Aaron, motionless, the hammer inches from his open hand. Alina staggered forward. "Is he?" Dylan's voice cracked. "He tried to hit you." "I couldn't let him," but Alina heard her own pulse too loudly to process the words. The world tilted. Officers burst through the doorway, shouting commands neither she nor the boys fully understood. Hands guided her backward, lowered her to a chair, wrapped something warm around her shoulders. Someone kept asking her questions she couldn't answer. A paramedic snapped fingers near her face. The room blurred again. When she finally came back to herself, Aaron was gone, carried out on a stretcher. Surrounded by medics who moved with grim urgency, Dylan sat handcuffed near the foyer, pale and shaking, his eyes fixed on the spot where Aaron had fallen. Miles argued with an officer, insisting none of this was Dylan's fault. Alina tried to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. At the station, everything felt too bright. She sat in a small interrogation room, staring at the metal table, listening to the soft hum of the fluorescent light. Detective Rowan entered with a notebook tucked under his arm. He was calm, almost gentle, which somehow made the tension worse. "Alina," he began, settling into the chair opposite hers. "I know tonight has been traumatic, but we need clarity." "Who swung the hammer?" Alina swallowed hard. I don't know. Everything happened so fast." Rowan nodded, not accusing, simply absorbing. "We'll walk through it. You said Aaron approached you, holding the hammer. Did he make physical contact?" "He grabbed me," she whispered. "He always grabbed me when he lost control." Rowan's eyes softened. "And Dylan, did he act aggressively?" "No," Alina said immediately. "He was trying to protect me. He was terrified." Rowan flipped through his notes. We found fingerprints from all three of you on the hammer. Her stomach twisted. All three. Miles had tried to grab it earlier. Aaron had held it. Dylan had wrestled for it. She had brushed it when falling. That single detail turned certainty to fog. Rowan continued. Dylan says he hit Aaron to stop him from hurting you. Miles says Aaron fell forward before the strike. You were nearest, but you fainted moments after. Alina pressed her hands to her face. I can't piece it together. My memory keeps blurring. That's common, Rowan said gently. Shock does that, but we need to reconstruct the scene. Hours blurred as detectives walked her through photographs, overturned furniture, shattered glass, the smeared picture frame still clinging to the wall. She flinched at the sight of her own frightened face frozen in the background of a body cam reflection. Rowan slid an image toward Haran lying on the floor. Your ex-husband's skull was fractured. The strike came from behind. Does that help? Behind? Not in front. Not where Dylan had stood when she last remembered seeing him. A cold wave passed through her. She shook her head. I don't know. Rowan didn't push. This isn't about blame. It's about truth. Someone swung that hammer. But what matters most is why this happened at all. Why? Alina closed her eyes. She saw flashes of Aaron shouting, Dylan crying, Miles bleeding, her own hands trembling as she reached for something she couldn't grasp. And beneath it all, years of fear knotted deep inside her. When Rowan finally released her into a quiet waiting room, dawn crept against the horizon. Dylan sat across from her, no longer handcuffed, though still guarded by an officer. His eyes lifted when she approached. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have told you sooner. I should have never listened to him. Alina sat beside him. You were manipulated. You were a kid who wanted to help. Dylan shook his head. He said you needed someone loyal. Someone who wouldn't leave. I thought I was protecting you, but I was just lost. She studied him, this boy who had built a world of devotion around her without her knowing. This boy Aaron had twisted into a tool. You aren't responsible for Aaron's choices, she said quietly. Or for the way he used your loneliness. Dylan's eyes filled with tears. But I hurt you. I scared you. Yes, she said softly. And you also saved me. He looked away, unable to accept the words. Miles was released shortly after, bandaged and exhausted. He limped toward them. Detective says they're still reviewing everything, but Dylan's not under arrest right now. Right now? Dylan repeated, voice shaking. Miles sat across from him. Hey, whatever happened, none of us acted out of cruelty. Aaron set this whole night in motion long before we realized it. Alina felt a pang at hearing Aaron's name. It would be weeks, months maybe, before the weight of tonight loosened its grip. But for the first time, she felt the faintest breath of relief. Not peace. Not yet. But a beginning. Hours later, Rowan returned with a final update. Aaron survived the surgery, he said, but he's in critical condition and unconscious. We'll get more answers when he wakes. Alina nodded slowly. Part of her felt guilty. Part of her felt nothing. Part of her felt relieved that the truth would not depend solely on memory. Rowan added, until then, none of you are being charged. We'll reconvene when we have more. As they stepped outside into the pale morning light, Alina inhaled deeply. The world smelled different, cold, raw, strangely open. She glanced at Dylan and Miles walking beside her. 3 survivors bound by a night none of them fully understood. Behind them, the station doors closed with a dull echo. Ahead of them waited questions, consequences, and a truth still shifting in the shadows. But for now, Alina took her first steady breath in months, knowing the cost of survival had only begun to reveal itself.